you've taken a pretty long time. You've had this. I mean, your grandpa's had it for a while. You've had it for a while. Like it's been waiting to get graded. And you've obviously taken great care of it. But it's just kind of awesome to see that it's going to be at least encapsulated and hopefully preserved. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Wax Talk with Raw Mints. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Bruce.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking to you about one of our favorite things in the hobby, and that's collecting what you love. Regardless of value, regardless of grade or condition, I think that this is something that we try to drive home every episode, at least. And today we're going to be talking more in depth about it and maybe sharing some of the cards that we love, whether they hold high value or not. But before we get into that, as always, if you could please be sure to follow, like, subscribe. This really helps us out a lot. This really helps us grow the podcast more and more. We really appreciate you listening every week. Everybody out there, wherever you are, if you're in school, if you're in work, if you're in class, if you're driving to work or anything, we really do thank you, and we're glad that you tune in every week. Please be sure to follow us on Instagram at Raw Mints. That's where you can find the majority of our content, as well as reach out to us if you ever have any questions or any sort of help that you need from us. We'll be definitely more than willing to help you out there. So like I said, today's episode, we're going to be talking about what's at the core of collecting what you love, and definitely sharing a few of our favorite cards that we have in our PC that we have no intention of letting go of because it's a card that we love. But also kind of exploring the aspects of the hobby that sometimes get lost in the mix of trying to invest, trying to make money. It could be real easy to forget or lose sight of what the hobby is really about, and that's collecting what you love and really focusing on building your PC. That way you just have it regardless of what happens in the market, regardless of what happens, in specific sports or in general within the hobby. It's nice to have something to fall back on that you can enjoy, whether it's looking at it, displaying it, or just knowing that you have it in your collection. So my first question for you, Bruce, is what's one card that you have in your PC right now? It can be vintage, it can be ultra modern. What's one card that you really enjoy just knowing that it's in your PC?
Well, the biggest one is a card that I was very excited to tell you that I just sent off to PSA from our friend Michael Rubin. It's a 1955 Topps Roberto Clemente rookie card. It's a card that I've mentioned before, and for me right now, just over this past weekend, this weekend we're currently in, I did a card show, a somewhat local card show for me, and I took that card with me raw. I've never put it in a showcase, so this is a big deal to me, like being able to I normally don't bring any vintage, like for my showcases. I don't put a lot of vintage baseball out unless it's stuff that I picked up like randomly, like graded or something, but like most of the vintage that I have right now is raw. So all of that stuff to me is just like the collectability purpose of it, that like I have it and like I know what the grade is. Like that's like a big topic I want us to discuss, is like knowing what you have and what the grade is and that it's authentic. Like that's all a big deal as a collector. Other collectors, like if you get in like a selling buying war, that changes dramatically, but collectors know what they have, and the longevity of it, of how long you've been collecting, is what really matters most. But that Clemente card is a big one for me. I've had it for a long time, inherited from my grandpa. Finally decided to send it off, worked out a deal with Mike Rubin on a trade where he's going to send it off PSA Express, and I'm honestly hoping for like a 3 like a 3 or a 4, if that makes sense. In the long run, I'm just hoping that it comes back graded, like as a grade, and not like tampered with or altered, or they didn't grade it at all, because that's always a possibility. Only because my grandpa had it and didn't pull it from a pack himself, but picked it up. But like, again, the knowledge that's passed down as far as knowing what's real, what's tampered with, like I'm certain of that, because I got that from him. So like that's helped me to understand grading cards myself. Before grading was a thing, like I've been collecting where like you just like know to keep your cards in good condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, man. It really does. And so my follow-up question to that, with what you just mentioned, how would you feel if it came back altered?
Realistically, I just want the card in a slab.
Right.
So if it came back like altered, like in some way, like I would rather have it authenticated or altered. Like even if it came back, they didn't grade it, it would be a huge bummer. But at the same time, I would just shoot for trying to get it still slabbed some way. You know what I mean? Like authentic, altered, whatever. But this is a card that I think has like good potential of at least grading. You know what I mean? I think I know it's better than a 1 because I've looked at a lot of examples of 1s.
And they're in rough shape.
Authentic is just kind of up in the air because that's what makes that market hard on that price, because authentic is just like somebody just, wanted that card for their PC, or they just knew it had great eye appeal. I mean, those things are a factor as well, but I mean, like, I feel like this card is, maybe it gets a 2, but like, I feel like it's a 3 or a 4, dude. And we'll be sharing like what the results are for sure. I mean, that's going to be a must that you got to take a photo of that for the page.
Oh, for sure.
When that comes back, So whatever it is, as long as it is in that slab, I will be happy with. And I feel like I feel like it's better than a 1 because I've seen examples. It doesn't have any creases. I mean, it's got beautiful color on it. It's off-centered top to bottom, the way that you look at those cards. Corners are not the best. I mean, it's got some stains, some things here and there. It's not a near mint to mint copy, but I'll be happy with whatever. Like I said, 3 or 4 is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it looks. I think it personally looks like it's in great shape. I'm not a vintage expert by any means, but
yeah, but you've seen examples of that card though. You know what I mean? I know you've been trying to pick up Clemente cards as well as some certain vintage baseball cards, and like the biggest thing is you kind of have to settle for a grade, like, because unless you're buying that card in person, it's really hard to buy them raw. So I've always told you, like, don't buy like pretty much anything nowadays. It's really hard to buy online, like we've talked about, unless somebody's willing to submit, in-depth pictures, multiple pictures, front and back, corners, like everything, But with vintage, it's almost like, why even waste your time with that? Like, it's just like, it's better to find it in person or just buy it graded. Start with the lowest grade possible and then work your way up. But with a card like the 55 Clemente, like, that's not a card that I can just go out and buy, like even raw or authentic. It's like, people ask a lot of money, understandably so. But so for me, I mean, that's one of the biggest cards that's like, as far as collectability, investment purposes, value overall, it means something. But for me, it's just like, I'm finally going to get this card graded, and it's just going to be cool to see what it comes back to hold.
I'm glad that you're finally getting it graded, man. I really am. And I'm super excited to see what it comes back as, for sure. I think it looks great. I think it's got great eye appeal regardless. But I'm hoping you just, you get a decent grade on it and you just go from there. 'Cause I know that, that's definitely a card that means something more to you, which is kind of perfect for this episode topic, is, collecting what you love. And, you've taken a pretty long time, you've had this, I mean, your grandpa's had it for a while, you've had it for a while, like it's been waiting to get graded, and you've obviously taken great care of it, but it's just kind of awesome to see that it's going to be at least encapsulated and hopefully preserved for the long run, whether that's a card that will stay with you forever and you pass it down to your son and so on and so forth, or if you decide to, you know, rehome it with another collector that's looking for Clemente, like at least it's encapsulated. And hopefully, you know, with the technology that we have today, hopefully it won't deteriorate because it is such an old card for sure.
The biggest tip in the hobby, as far as gaining your knowledge in the hobby, is through longevity. So for me, I'm fortunate enough to come from a time where I've been collecting for a very long time, and, you know, up to the modern time trying to adapt, but I still have an old school type head. So when I talk about longevity in the hobby, it's still possible to learn everything that you can. But what most people will proclaim is that you have to do your research. And let's just not talk about eBay comps, but just looking back on all ways that you can about sports cards, from the beginning, you know, to present times, and doing that research an hour, 2 hours a day or an evening before you go to bed, may help in a lot of ways, just doing your study time. I think that there's ways, because for you, Carlos, like I feel like you got into it and you started seeing what values were going for, but then you started looking into what you were actually into, you know, like 90s stuff that didn't have any value at all, but they were just players that you liked. So you started to learn about older sets and certain things like that. And I feel like that's what benefited you in a way. But longevity is really based off of helping you, you know, grow to learn about something, no matter what it is. But the knowledge that you can gain from the hobby is still relevant as long as you do your research and you don't just focus on what is hot and what sells the most. Just do your research on everything, you know, because especially chances are most people think of like an old school player that they grew up watching. So when you look at that old school player, most of the time there's not any value there. A lot of times there is, depending on who it was, but those types of things will help you figure out older years and older sets, as well as when like Fanatics becomes a thing and they're trying to make it a one-stop shop for everything, and it just may take away from the originality of different sets and throughout the years. It's just good to do your research that way. And just because I've been collecting for a long time and I know a lot of the sets that began and ended and are current and are changing or whatever it may be, as long as you do, you know, your research, you can still figure that stuff out for yourself. And I think you've done a good job of that as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time. I mean, it's going on 2 years that I've been involved in the hobby now, and I've learned, it feels like I've learned, you know, so much just by doing research. And one of my favorite things that I was doing at the beginning, which I still do today, is looking up checklists. That's probably one of my favorite things to look up. And it doesn't really matter the sport, doesn't really matter the year, whether it's vintage or modern. Just looking at the checklist is pretty...
Dude, and you're an old school collector at heart, because like back in the day, like in packs, like you had a checklist. That was a part of pack, you know what I mean? The set, you would get
right.
a checklist. And sometimes 2 checklists, whatever. But it's just funny that you would even care about something like that, because most people wouldn't.
Right. And this is probably more specific on the soccer side of things, because again, I think we've spoke on this before. It's really difficult to find a player's true rookie card or a true rookie sticker when it comes to soccer. It's like very difficult, actually. It takes a lot more research than just going to eBay and typing in rookie, you know, typing in the player's name and rookie. Like, you have to really know your products. You have to really know, you know, the checklist. Thankfully, with soccer, I mean, nowadays there's a lot more products out there, but thankfully, you know, in the early stages of, you know, modern soccer cards, as far as like 2003, 2004 mega cracks, those types of cards, you know, looking for the Messis, looking for the Ronaldos of the world. It's way different now because there's so many products. But then in the mid 2000s to like the early 2010s, like there weren't really that many products. But I mean, there's a lot, but in comparison to the other sports, it was real easy to just kind of go year by year and product by product and just going backwards, working backwards. Like one of the things that I enjoyed doing was trying to like just finding what that player's rookie card was. And
Yep.
it takes digging because you go to their Wikipedia and it shows you their youth career years. It also shows you their senior career years, which usually the senior career is when they start appearing in products, but not always. And, you just kind of start at that their senior debut, or maybe even like a year before, and just trying to find their name in products. That's why checklists are super important, and
Yeah.
extended checklists as well, because there's some players, especially autos of early players, that they're not in the base set at all. They're in an insert, set. They've only got one card in that whole entire set, and it's not even in the base set. So, you could be looking for a player and their true rookie card doesn't look like the flagship cards of other players because it's just an insert in that product. But had you not, checked the extended checklist of that product, you may not have, found it. Especially another thing too, it's like you can also say, okay, well, I'll go to psacard.com and look up the pop report and try to find that player that way. But soccer is so new within the hobby, especially as far as grading goes, that they might not have their true rookie card graded yet. So you could be 2 years sooner than you should, maybe 2 years away from their actual rookie year. So it's checklists really became a staple of how I did research as far as picking things up in the hobby.
But you also looked into players that only had one rookie card, like regardless of sport, outside of soccer. I mean, I know with baseball and football and basketball, even like you've looked into like rookie cards and you see that there's one rookie card. So that's something to note as well, as like figure out knowing the difference as far as like how few products were back in the day. And even for you and me, for more nostalgic purposes, when you look at like a dude that you grew up watching, you see that they have multiple rookie cards, same as the ultra modern era, maybe a little bit less than that, but where you have so many different things. And this may change subject to fanatics, but certain players that you look into and you see that they have multiple rookie cards. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to start with the cheapest rookie card, because you want to collect this player. You start with that, whether it's raw or graded. Obviously graded makes like a huge difference, but picking up, the player rookie cards at the best price you can, because like with basketball, like I'm thinking, like in my mind, I'm thinking of like Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, like for some reason, Alonzo Mourning, but it's like they didn't necessarily have a true rookie card unless you're picking up like their college stuff.
Right.
Which at the same time to me is not really like, it doesn't feel like it does with Bowman first, prospects. Right. It's just different. So like with like basketball, like when you think of Penny Hardaway, like I'm thinking of the, Topps Finest rookie, and then you got the refractor. You don't got the gold or anything different, or silver. The silver is the refractor, So sometimes like with certain products, when I look at a silver card, I'm just like, that's a refractor. Like that's a mindset that I have, and that's still the mindset that you have with baseball. RIP, I guess, soon enough, as like Topps Chrome. You know what I mean? You get a silver, Topps Chrome silver. It's not a silver, it's a refractor.
It's a refractor, right.
So like that's the way that I look at it, because I'm old school that way. And I feel like most people that do their research, they understand that. But for basketball, going back to Penny Hardaway, everything that comes out now is called a silver. It's not a refractor. But a Penny Hardaway Topps Finest refractor is not a silver. That's a refractor.
Right. That Topps Finest back in the day was so dope. That's probably one of my favorite products. Super expensive, when you get, depending on the player and depending the grade. But yeah, Topps Finest is super sick.
For basketball, that's the first year of Topps Finest. So like with baseball, it's considered 93.
Right.
But like that's the first set for Topps Finest basketball. That's before Topps Chrome. That's before Bowman's Best, right. Bowman Chrome. Because basketball had that obviously, but Yeah, Topps Finest was like the first thing like that, I guess.
And it's really tough to find that first release that's not green too. So
Well, that's
unfortunately,
everything, especially with like 96, like Topps Chrome, Kobe and Ray Allen and those guys. Those are like super green, hulked out,
right. It's that
quite a
Hulk
bit.
edition.
But with 94, so you have before that you have 94 Finest, which is Penny Hardaway, and then you have the following year, which is Grant Hill, Jason Kidd, Jalen Rose, Danielle Marshall, just random people like that. And then the following year you have Kevin Garnett and Rasheed Wallace,
Right.
and those kind of guys. And then getting into the year with Kobe Bryant. We were talking about Topps Chrome actually, so I got a little bit confused for a second. But speaking of that though, with Topps Finest, you did have the protective like peeling cover, which
Right. The
started
coating.
yeah, so that started like a little bit before that. But that's always something just randomly that I thought was always cooler, like as far as most people would peel that off to grade a card,
Right.
but to be able to get a gem mint version with that coating on, I feel like is so much more impossible.
Right. Yeah. And that's I've done that before. I had a few Steve Nash rookies from 1996 Topps Finest, and I had maybe about 4. I picked up about 3 raw, and I also picked up a GMA 10, I believe, or not a GMA 10. I think might have been a GMA 9, but that GMA, and they all had the protective coating. So what I'm hoping for is that GMA 9, which again, you kind of have to be weary regardless. You can't really, a GMA 9 times out of 10 is not going to be a PSA 9, but you take your gambles with a higher grade in there. But it had the coating on it, so I cracked it and I peeled the coating carefully and pretty much gave it a brand new surface, which was nice. And
I know that's what I always thought too, man. And like the thing is you can definitely get a gem, a 10 card with a peeled off surface. But like I just always was like, what if you can get that 10 with the surface still on it? And it's almost always impossible. Even straight out of the pack, I remember opening Topps Finest that had Kevin Garnett's rookie year, and I never pulled the Kevin Garnett. I remember I had the Rasheed Wallace Antonio McDyess.
Okay,
He's with the Nuggets.
That's a name.
And then I don't even know who else, but just like that was just such a like a syrupy product, dude. Like the way those smell. We talk about the way like products smell, like chrome. Like that was like a really early example of that, and it was so fresh. And that like shout out to freaking Pete at Showtime, because I mean I'm pretty sure my grandpa got a box at Pete's at his previous location that was pretty much 10p. But like I remember that, dude, and it's just like those were like so fresh products, dude. Like it's just crazy to think about that. So biggest thing as far as collecting what you like is, for me, like right now I'm thinking about trying to get a Kevin Garnett rookie and like a PSA 8 or a 9
Right.
at a decent price. But to be able to open that product again, hopefully stored well, just seems like the biggest thing. I don't know, like if you came across a box of that, you're probably not going to rip it.
Right. You wouldn't want to. I mean, I would
Because
want to.
there's
but
inserts in there too, dude. Like, I mean, Jordan is in there and has a cool insert, and I mean that kind of stuff is a possibility. So that's like the collectability as far as keeping things sealed. But for me, like if I had a box of that, I would love to rip it. That's not like the top box I would pick to rip, but I mean, still, I mean, it would just be fun.
Yeah, I think so too. That's one thing that kind of bums me out about wax prices, because there's so many products of years from the 90s that I would just love to rip, and that goes for any sport really. And it's kind of to the point where the boxes are they're hard to find, man. They're super rare to find, especially still sealed and not tampered with, which I understand that holds a really high premium, and usually people are probably just going to keep them sealed anyways. But
it doesn't make it any better that ultra modern boxes are so expensive too. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's kind of like
Right.
unfair. Like, it's not what the hobby's about. Like, people should be able to rip things and collect what they like.
Especially new stuff, man, because there's just so much of it.
There's so
There's so
much of
much
it, yeah.
available.
But I mean, you throw in that factor that because back in the day, you didn't have like the possibility of pulling a superfractor or like the gold to 10 or
Right. The
anything
parallels
like that.
never.
Like, you had like the base set and you had maybe a refractor, and that was what you got. And those refractors, because of the rarity of the, you know what I mean, how the time of that was. Same thing with like or even refractors and atomic refractors, like with Kobe Bryant's rookie year, with Bowman's Best. It's like the fact that like it's hard to pull those cards, but that's all you really can get. You know what I mean? Whereas opposed to today, even in retail or whatever, you're pulling refractors, you're pulling atomic, cracked ice, like shimmers, like whatever. Like, they just put so much stuff out there, and it's really cool and it appeals to people and kids, which is what is great. But like, the prices shouldn't be that high to do that, you know, especially if there's an abundance of these products. You know, I think it's easier to be able to make a product where you have cool parallels, flashy things, inserts, just things that appeal to people that want to collect in the hobby. That's great. But also giving that chance of being able to pull just like a parallel or two things that, you know what I mean, is like available. It's in the set, but it's really hard to pull. So if you have that stuff, it brings more of a premium, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways to, like, if I was making a product, like like what I would try to do.
Yeah, it does make sense to me, but I think that what they're doing now, as much as we maybe disagree with the amount of products that are out there and the amount of products that are going to come out, I think what they're doing as far as the low serial numbered products or the low serial numbered parallels that they have in products, I think that is a good fail-safe for the hobby. Again, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in the market. We don't know if there's a crash or a bubble happening. But if there is, we've said it before, you know, those low serial numbered cards are going to hold a premium over base cards or even just regular silver cards, just regular non-numbered parallel cards. They have to, because if you look at it, you know, if you look at a pop report of maybe a Luka or a Zion Prism, there's like tens of thousands of silvers graded, PSA 10s, gem cards. There's tens of thousands of perfect examples of those silvers or greens or red, white, and blue prisms. But if you have a card that's numbered to even say 100, even 150, that's it. That's the max. That'll max out at 150, whatever that parallel is. And I think that with them doing it that way, again, I don't really agree with the overproduction of things, and who knows what the actual print runs are of these products. But if you're collecting a player and he's really popular, or he or she is really popular, and they have really high pop reports, you can't beat knowing that there's literally only X amount in the world, you know? So
Yeah.
I think them doing it that way it's a fail safe. I think that will end up happening. That's why if you're out there and you're spending a lot of money on base cards, I would probably flip and reinvest into something low serial numbered, to be honest.
And I think that there's a few sneaky ways in the hobby as far as, like, say we're talking about silvers. So there's probably an abundance of silvers throughout many years, but the way that the hobby might switch things up is that you get a silver and it's a little bit more limited. Like, I remember in certain sets, it was a little bit harder to pull a silver, whereas opposed to like Patrick Mahomes' rookie year, like you pull his Prism rookie card, it's a silver, you know? So I feel like there's like certain sets throughout time that make it a little bit harder to pull silvers. But at the same time, you have, like an example is it's like, I think it's a retail only thing, but you have the blue and the red, like the solid blue and red, and they're not numbered at all. And I think that the blue is like closer to Walmart and the red is closer to Target, maybe not, but certain cards like that. And I know like Patrick Mahomes has a solid blue retail and a solid blue or a solid red retail that's not numbered, but supposedly those cards are numbered to like 7 or 10 or less or something like that. Like that's a rumor, but I don't know if that's true. But those cards are obviously harder to come by and obviously graded and high grade depending on the set, which can be difficult like that particular year. But like a retail blue Mahomes, I haven't looked up an example at all of that card, but I'm sure like in a high grade, that's an outrageous card, way more than a silver, so there's like different ways that like you can study to figure out, like as far as even if you're opening retail or hobby, certain things that might be more rare, because like I said, those retail reds or blues, probably a lot lower pop, in general, for silvers, or even a card that's numbered to 149 possibly, a cool hobby parallel, an orange or whatever, that red or blue could be a lesser pop or lesser population in general for the entire card, even though not numbered, than an actual serial numbered card.
So to tap back into the episode topic, what would you say about comparing an SGC 10 to a BGS 9.5 card? It doesn't matter the card, just the same card. Should people really value the grading companies as much as they do? I mean, obviously we know that they do when it comes to price, but you personally, if I were to ask you, okay, you can get a 1989, Derek Jeter star rookie upper deck, and it's either going to be a SGC 10 or a BGS 9. What are you going to go with, like for your PC?
Before I even get into those comparisons, the biggest thing as far as just collecting what you like is being able to determine your own value, regardless if it's PSA. I mean, PSA is like the top for everything, but being able to, if you have that card raw, being able to determine the value on it yourself. And here's the biggest thing that will scare people away from any type of sale, whether it's graded pristine or it's raw, is sentimental value. Sentimental value will scare anybody away. Like if they get the vibe that you have sentimental value in something, then they'll probably give up on obtaining that card from you for the most part. But at the same time, if you're that attached to that card, then don't give it up. You know what I mean? Unless the price is right. That's how it should be. If there's a card that you don't want to let go of, hold it, unless the price is right, and otherwise don't sell it. And if you do sell it, like I always try to do, is be able to get something in trade, or I'm going to reinvest that money into something that I want. That same player too. If I sell a rookie of a player that I really didn't want to let go of and I like that rookie, I'm going to, worst case scenario, pick up that same card raw if I can, or you know what I mean, just like pick up a cheaper rookie of that player. But that's the biggest thing. Like sentimental value is a huge deal, and that is appropriate if you are collecting what you like. But the more that you get into it, you're going to make funds to pick up the stuff that you like to hold. And when that stuff gains value, automatically you're considering like what you could make, you know what I mean? And if you're going to let go of those cards that you like, I just think it's important to pick up that same player, that same team, whatever it may be, just always constantly reinvesting that way. But if there's something that you have, if you're setting up at a show and you just really like that card, you don't have to label it anything, but just like have that card just to appreciate in your showcase. And when people ask about it, it's not for sale. And then some people will say, well, why do you have it in your showcase if it's not for sale? And just tell them that, it looks really dope in a showcase, just to be able to have that card and just appreciate it and just explain to collectors and people that are investing, whatever, the reason why you're displaying it. I think that's important too, man, is just being able to control, the market that way, as far as like how you want to display something or why you're selling it for as high as you do. At the same time, you shouldn't be selling everything for super high, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be investing into something that you can't make a profit in that way.
Right. If you are investing. that was a really good point to make, is sentimental value, and it does scare people away. But if you're just showing it just to show it for showing sake, then that's kind of what the hobby is about, is being proud of your collection, being proud of certain cards that you do own and that aren't for sale, and just being able to show it off. Even if it's somebody that's not a popular player, somebody that never won a championship or something, but that's your favorite player, by all means, definitely show it off and be proud of it, because that's what, that's what the hobby really is about, is being proud of your collection. And so I'll pose that question again. 1989 Upper Deck Star rookie Ken Griffey Jr., are you choosing an SGC 10 or a BGS 9?
So for me right now, if you are asking if it's an older SGC label, like say an old school label,
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to take, because I don't like the newer SGC label. Like, they've been a company for a long time. A lot of people will say, well, they have younger people grading their stuff now. Regardless, I mean, that could be the same for PSA, BGS. It doesn't matter what company it is. I just like the way the older label looks, so I would definitely take that. But the only advantage, if you're going to pick BGS, there's two different ways to go about this. Is you're lucky enough to get an older label, BGS 9, where the subgrades are on the back, and it's 0.5 away from getting a BGS 9.5, or a current one that is the same thing. But that's the thing too, like with BGS, and a lot of collectors will agree. I've seen that with like Jordan rookies and other older, like somewhat vintage rookies, is people take note of the older labels, because they were probably a lot harsher on their grades back then. And BGS is super tough because, unlike PSA, they're really focusing on the front and the back of the card, I think. So I feel like that's a big factor. But back then they were probably a lot more strict, and now they are still strict, but they've probably lessened up a little bit. So the biggest thing is, like, if I could get a BGS 9 Ken Griffey Upper Deck Star rookie with the old school label, 0.5 away in the back, it's definitely worth cracking out and submitting and sending even to PSA or whatever you want to do that way. Biggest thing for that card though is the centering. Like, if the centering is at least legit, then I'm willing to take a chance. Like, you know what I mean? As far as if everything else looks clean. But that's a tough one. But I would definitely take an SGC 10 for sure in an old label over even a BGS 9. But that's still debatable.
Right. So, I mean, overall, really, if you're collecting, you collect the card, don't collect the slab. It shouldn't matter the grade if it's a card that you really enjoy, or a card that you really want for your collection. It shouldn't really matter the grade. And if the grade doesn't matter, then the grading company shouldn't matter either. I think we put a lot of value on grading companies, which majority of our cards that we've sent in is with PSA. I know you've sent with BGS before, but the reason why we grade with PSA is because, yeah, it is a premium. It does hold a higher premium as far as the value goes, but it is considered by everybody as the best grading company, which is debatable, well, of course.
They're giving us a good idea of what the card, right, you know what I mean, the grade of the card is. And you mentioned GMA. So here's the thing too, like you mentioned picking up GMA Steve Nash rookie cards, and nobody wants that crap. But at the same time, I would rather take a chance on picking up those GMA cards than just picking them up raw.
Right.
I mean, it makes much more sense, dude, because you could at least crack that out and hope for the best. And you've done that many times.
Right. Many times.
With a lot of cards. And I feel like you have a better chance.
Right. I mean, to be honest, the GMA slabs, they're not built well. It's not uncommon for cards to be rattling around in there, which is never good.
With PSA, it happens too, man. I mean,
it does.
With PSA, you shouldn't be shaking your cards, but at the same time, I always test that out with PSA cards, because sometimes they rattle a little bit, and then when they don't, you're like, okay, it's good.
Right. But even just the build, the quality, you could just tell it's just not there. And talk about counterfeits, I'm sure that I've probably picked up some fake GMA slabs. Not so much fake, but just cards replaced for a better quality, because I've picked up quite a few GMA 10s and they're definitely not PSA 10s. They're definitely not. They shouldn't have been graded a 10. Like I've picked up multiple. I've picked up, GMA 8s, I've picked up GMA 9s, GMA 10s, and I've seen GMA 10s that look like GMA 8s. And it's just very inconsistent, and it's hard to track. It's hard to keep track of, I think. So be wary if you're doing that. But again, if the raw card is very similar in price to a GMA 10 or a GMA 9, I'm just, even if I have to spend a little bit more, I'd rather get it graded, get the GMA slab rather than straight up raw, because whether somebody actually looked at it or somebody faked the slab and put in a fake grade, I mean, to go to that trouble, I'm just going to trust that somebody actually did get it graded by GMA over just picking up a raw card.
I don't think anybody's trying to reslab GMA, and if they are, that's just terrible. But
it's possible, man. You'd be surprised.
You've picked up GMA 10s, so like the way I've always told you, because they're obviously a lot cheaper than any type of 10, but like you're always hoping that like at the best it's gonna 9, because it's not gonna get a PSA 10. There's probably rare incidences where that happens, but if you pick up a GMA 10, then you're really hoping for a PSA 9, at least for us, because we grade with PSA. Don't be surprised if you get an 8, but that's usually the way that I look at it. You're not going to get a GMA 10 and get a PSA 10. You're going to hope for a PSA 9, maybe get an 8. Shouldn't get anything below that.
Shouldn't, but I mean, I've seen some cards that's like, ooh, this is rough. I might not even send this in. Yeah, just be wary of that. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't really matter what the card is in as far as grading company goes if you are collecting it. Obviously, if you're investing, we all know that PSA is most likely going to yield the best return because it is the industry standard at the moment, as far as like that holds the most value. Even we won't get into 9.5 BGS 9.5s versus PSA 10s.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
There's an amount of leniency in PSA, I feel like, because it's like if your card is decent, it's gonna get a 9 or a 10, and there's incidences where you get an 8 or lower. Like I got a Sam Darnold 5. I mean, that stuff happens. But at the end of the day, like I feel like most of the time you're able to bet it that way. Like with BGS, it is a lot more stricter because they place those subgrades in front of you to let you know like what they're particularly grading. And this isn't just the front, it's the back as well. You have the 4 subs, which is like pretty much any grading company goes for. Some of them label them, some of them don't. So you have like that thing where you can get more of like a 7.5 or an 8.5 with Beckett, whereas where PSA goes, you get more like of an 8.5, or it's usually going to be an 8 or a 9. So I mean that's more of a topic as far as like grading goes, as far as what the differences are. But at the end of the day, I mean, having your cards PC or not, like being able to judge those for yourself, because we're never satisfied when we get grades back. I mean, we've been fortunate enough where we get a lot of 9s and 10s with PSA, but at the end of the day, like being able to hold, especially when you get into vintage and just knowing what you have and being able to like kind of grade them yourself based off of eye appeal, it's a lot more meaningful to me.
So let's get into our pickups and flips of the week. So my pickup of the week, I'm a huge fan of Panini Obsidian. It's one of my favorite products as far as ultra modern goes. And I won an auction. I picked up a 2019 Panini Obsidian. So this is the first year of soccer. This is Marco Reus, card number 46. This is in his Germany kit. And I picked up a PSA 9, the Electric Etch Green, which is numbered to 25, and I picked that up for $31. I won an auction. It didn't have many bids on it, and I'm a huge Dortmund fan. I'm a huge German national team fan, and I'm a real fan of Marco Reus. I really like him, so I felt like I pretty much won a good one. I set the bid pretty high. I think I set it for like $75 and ended up closing at 31. So that was my pickup of the week. What about you?
You being a fan of Obsidian, I mean, it's like a no-brainer for sure. That's really cool. My pickup is going to be from a local show. One of my favorite baseball players is Fernando Tatis Jr., and I picked up his 2019 Topps Series 2 flagship rookie, I guess you could call it. It's a PSA slab card, base card. The grade of the card itself is not graded, but it is an on-card auto, and that was gem at 10 as far as the slab goes. I actually traded a Topps Chrome PSA 10 Tatis Jr. towards this card and a few other cards, but not really sure what the value of it is. But it's just something like kind of like a PC thing. Like I've been trying to pick up Tatis, and that 2019 Topps card is fairly iconic, I feel like, and to have that, it's a blue bold auto on it, PSA authenticated 10. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a great pickup, man. My flip of the week was a long-term investment. I picked up some boxes of 2014 Panini World Cup stickers, probably about a year and a few months ago. I remember I picked up these boxes for probably about like $25 a box, so pretty cheap at the time, and submitted a lot of stickers in for grading from those boxes that I picked up. And one of my stickers was a 2014, like I said, Panini World Cup, and this was a Memphis Depay. This is sticker number 141. This is, I believe it's his rookie sticker. I didn't find any other data outside of it. I could be incorrect, but it PSA 10, so it's a pop 3, and I sold that for $150. So considering I got maybe, I want to say like two boxes for $50, that was one of the stickers that gemmed from that set, and I flipped that and made $100 just off of that card, essentially. I also got a PSA 10 Son and also a Lukaku, so that's just one of the investments that I made early, and I'm glad that it paid off.
And I know we like Memphis Depay, so I feel like you at least have a raw or a lower grade copy of that card that you're holding on to for sure. My flip of the week is going to be, it's hard to sell basketball right now, even though we're less than a month away from season beginning. Was a 2007 Topps black border, the regular black border Kevin Durant. This card was in a PSA 8. These cards probably range anywhere from 80 to 140 even, as far as recent sales. I sold this card for 100 even. I do have a couple copies of this card raw that I'm holding on to. This card I've had for a long time, that we sent off. Carlos, we got back recently after, sending in from like a year ago or so, but wasn't into this card for anything. 100 to a buyer that wanted a solid Kevin Durant rookie card, PSA 8, $100. I felt like it was a good deal.
It's a great deal, man. It was a great deal. That card was in rough shape, I remember. That's a great flip, man. So those are our pickups and flips of the week. All right, so I believe that we dove into collecting what you love. I'm sure there's obviously so much more we can talk about. There's so many more things that we didn't cover that we'll continue to cover, and we'll maybe have a part 2 of this in the future. But is there anything else that you wanted to add to anybody out there that's collecting that maybe doesn't know the core value of collecting in the hobby? Is there anything that you could, any words of wisdom that you could share with people out there?
Not really, because every episode we say collect what you like, and that is what is going to be the key words in this topic of this episode, is collect what you like. And if you follow your heart in that, I mean, that's really all that's going to matter. And like I said, I've been a collector for a while. It doesn't mean anything to anybody that is coming into the hobby right now and is not just about the money, and being able to do your research and see what's come out beforehand up to present date. If you do that research and you care enough to do that in general, and also, seeing what's hot. I mean, even in Beckett magazine, like you open a Beckett and you got the top 10 or top 15 or whatever, like it's always important to know what's hot, who's the hot player, what's their key rookie card. That's always the excitement for the whole thing. But just realistically collecting what you like in general, no matter if they're a great team or a great player, whatever it is, go forward in that, and have it be a reason to fuel your hobby, to be able to pick up those things and then look outside of it, because that can help you bring profit in, to be able to pick more up of that player that you like, or however you decide to go forward in the hobby. And it's an increasingly it's super fast, the way, especially with Fanatics. I know more people are going to get into the hobby because of Fanatics, but at the same time, I just hope that even if they do, they just learn about what came out beforehand. That's important.
Right. And there's no shame in, like you said, in picking up what's hot and knowing how to time the current markets and the ultramodern markets, and just flipping and then just trading that in for maybe something that you really love. I mean, we do that all the time. That's something that I found myself doing over the last 2 years, is, taking advantage of the hype, providing buyers with something that they're hyped about at the moment, and I reinvest into something that I really like and I've been wanting for some time. If I can trade a couple PSA 10s of a brand new rookie card that hasn't proved themselves and sell those for a 96 Kobe, PSA graded card, I'll do that all day. So, because that's what I love and that's what I love collecting. So you can't really go wrong, and we'll continue to say that probably every episode. But we really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Really hope you enjoyed our take on it and our aspects of how we collect and why we collect. I know that we could talk for a lot longer about it, but that's today's episode. So be sure to follow us and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and tell somebody about it. Share the word, spread the word. There's some tips that we share that can help people change their lives and make more money. There's also tips that we share that will help you find a new hobby to spend your time with. So we really enjoy it, and we'll continue to do that. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Raw Mints. That's where we post the majority of our content. And be sure to reach out to us if you have any questions, if there's anything we can help you with. We're here to help. With that being said, this has been another episode of Wax Talk with Raw Mints. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Bruce.
Thank you for listening.